Villa just after the Steven Gerrard sacking. I'm here with Chris. Is it?
Yeah,
Right,
Chris.
yeah. Just a few questions. Chris, what do you make of today's performance against Fulham and how it led up to the Gerrard sacking?
Um, I think, to be honest, the only way that Gerrard's career with Villa would have been savable if it had been 5-0. I think that when you look at the relationship that we've had with previous managers and the way that the club has turned on a manager, we're very a divided fan base. But united, we stood against Gerrard in his probably his last 2 or 3 games. There was conversations across the Trinity, in Aston Social, whether you're down the Witten Arms, whatever. It was conversations about how long has he got left, and there was no one sort of really wanting to give him the time of day to say, oh, he could do better, he could do better. I think the 3-0 was indicative of the relationship that the players have with the fans and the media, where they can't necessarily tell you what's going on behind closed doors, but their body language and the way that they performed indicated everything we needed to know.
You could see the body language of the players of the last couple of games as well. They kind of look sick and tired of just playing on Steven Gerrard, to be honest. And I think you could see that. You could see that week in, week out, to be honest. And do you think that Steven Gerrard sacking was a long time coming? I think it definitely should have been somewhere towards even the Leeds game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the club are in a difficult position because it could have turned. Let's be honest, it could have turned, but that would have been down to stuff that as fans we're not privy to, the information that's going on behind closed doors and sort of personal issues with the players that could have turned as to why they weren't performing as well. But it never seemed to be a situation that was ever going to turn. I mean, when we got to the stages of Dean Smith being sacked, we could almost predict it on the 70th minute that either Trezeguet or El Ghazi was going to be replaced by each other. And it was bang on, it was clockwork. 70th minute, you knew it was going to happen. And the same thing happened with Coutinho and Buendia, or Coutinho and Danny Ings, or Bailey and Danny Ings. You could tell on the 70th to sort of probably 67th minute that there was going to be a change, and you knew exactly what the change was going to be, but it was never going to make any impact. Whereas the Villa fans were asking for something different. We were asking for a bit more creativity, a little bit more spice in what was going on. So particularly with Buendia, we always wanted Buendia to start, because right from the off, when he came into the club, he's shown signs of being a real playmaker and making things happen. And the other thing is that we've sort of isolated players like Philogene to base and Cameron Archer, and Cameron Archer has shown real signs of promise, something that could massively happen and take off for the club. And then when you look at sort of Ollie Watkins at the start of the season, who said, I've employed my own private finishing coach, and then he's still not be able to put in a single goal with sort of 7 chances where he's right in front of goal, one-on-one with the keeper. You're sort of asking yourself, maybe there's something else going on where it's more strategic than just the fact that we've got shit players. Because at the end of the day, we know that we've got the talent there because we've got international players playing for the club. We've got real talents there that on their day can actually really perform. And individually, they do seem to show some real individual talent. But across the board, as a working team, as a network, and as a strategy, nothing seems to connect.
Definitely. There's talks of Purslow. Do you think it was Purslow's fault that he was given too much time, or even Purslow's decision? There was some talk. I think you were on that Villa Zoo space, wasn't you? So it was definitely, there was talks of he feels it more as like an image rather than his own club. He gives it more thought that how big is the image rather than how we play on the pitch. What do you think of that?
So Perslow's a difficult one, because I'm sat on the fence with this one, because I can see where the fans are coming from. Obviously, there's a whole relationship with Perslow and Liverpool. And then if we look at the North Stand and the new Villa fan park that's being built and the architecture that's around it, it looks very, very Liverpool-esque in terms of how the architecture is actually built. It's almost like they've employed the same architects. I probably need another Villa fan to come in and verify that for me, but it looks very similar. And then you look at their relationship, and then he was his go-to guy to bring it into Villa. But the problem is that I think we've all been in a situation where you've had a relationship with a colleague, a professional relationship with a colleague or a manager, where you want to give them the benefit of the doubt because you recognize their potential. And I think they probably had that relationship, but because Gerrard didn't have that connectivity with the fans, we couldn't give him the same benefit of the doubt that maybe we gave someone like Dean Smith. So you're in a sort of us and them relationship as fans, is that they've got this relationship going on between them where they clearly obviously think a lot of each other. But like I said on the spaces, on Twitter Spaces tonight, is that in all fairness to Purslow and the senior management at play, is that you have, barring Steve Bruce, who was inherited, you only have Dean Smith and Steven Gerrard to go off the record. And you can go to two ends of the extremes. I mean, you can end up like a Watford where you're sacking and replacing managers every 5 seconds and it never works out for you. Or you can just keep them on longevity to the point where you end up actually relegated, which is what I think Norwich ended up doing with their previous manager, to the one that Dean Smith's predecessor. So you've got that constant sort of like sat on the fence of whether it's the right call to do. And I think Steven Gerrard's prowess as a midfielder, I mean, he's one of the best midfielders that this country's ever produced. So you felt like that would have some influence, but unlike Dean Smith, we noticed a seismic change in terms of the players that he brought in and how well he was able to develop them, even from a young age, of the performance, that the outputs when he started bringing them into the first team, and then the outputs that they then started putting out. And I mean, you can look at Matty Targett, you can look at, various other sort of individuals. They did get to a point where they were better than when they first started in the first team for Villa. So it's quite an interesting relationship. But I mean, sorry to waffle on. I mean, I'm brought up a Celtic fan. Half my family's Scottish, Irish immigrants to Glasgow. So I closely watched Steven Gerrard's career at Rangers. And the only reason that Gerrard ever got as far as he did with Rangers is because Celtic absolutely bottled it that season. They were in an absolute mess. I mean, they still had a hangover from Neil Lennon. They brought in Angelo to come in to replace her. He was still rebuilding. And if you look at the overall performance of the squad in terms of what they were doing and how they were performing, if you look at who's that Colombian player that's striker for
Morales, was it?
Morales.
Yeah.
If you look at his overall discipline on the pitch, it's insane. I mean, he was getting like red card after red card after red card. And the reason that he's getting that many red cards is because he's not having that discipline instilled for him. He's still quite a young player. He's not having that discipline instilled for him from the coaching team and from the management. And of course, you've got the whole Michael Beale situation where Michael Beale then leaves for QPR. But I don't think it, apart from the new manager bounce that we had, where we had a run of 2 or 3 games where we saw a quantifiable uptake in our performance post Dean Smith, I don't think you can really look at that and say that Michael Beale really had much of an influence in terms of the overall strategy, because we still went back to not being great performers and still being bottom of the run table. I mean, I think we got up to like 13th, but I mean, what's 13th in the grand scheme of things in comparison to where Dean Smith was going to get us?
That's true, yeah. Who's next for Aston Villa? Who do you want? We've heard talks of Unai Emery, Thomas Tuchel, even Pochettino. But are Villa actually going to secure their managers in a realistic aspect? Sat 17th in the Premier League.
Yeah, so I would like to see us go hell for leather for Pochettino. Whether that's realistic, I like to be the Villa fan that lives on the side of optimism and hold hope in my heart. Generally, I'm not too sure whether it's going to happen, but I would like to see the club make serious efforts to get Pochettino in. My second would be then Tuchel, but Tuchel seems less likely than it does.
For Pochettino, I see what you mean.
Yeah, because I feel like Tuchel would be sort of a natural guy to go to sort of another sort of, for example, if Arsenal weren't doing so well, I could see him going to another sort of North London club like Arsenal or Tottenham, or potentially going into sort of the Bundesliga and doing it up there, or even taking on Ajax if they weren't hitting the sort of European spots that they thought they were under Ten Hag. So yeah, I can't see Tuchel happening, but I would like to see those two as a massive attempt. I know that the Villa fan base, and I'd probably say about 30% of them, and apologies if I get this wrong, but 30% of them are going after Thomas Frank, or would like to
Yeah,
see
I
a
can see that as well. Yeah.
Thomas Frank. In my opinion, I think Thomas Frank is a mid-table manager. I think he's still developing. He's done really well with Brentford, but also we could be seeing another Sheffield situation. Whereas if he leaves, if Ivan Toney leaves, I mean, it's like us with Villa. You know, if Grealish leaves, then the whole morale of the club drops.
Yeah.
And then that really affects the confidence of the players because they haven't got a playmaker anymore. So effectively, if Ivan Toney leaves and gets signed like by Chelsea or, you know, whoever, then they're in that situation again. So I personally would like to see Unai Emery, although I don't know too much about him, Tuchel, and then Poch as our main target.
Hopefully we can see that in the next coming weeks. We've got Brentford on Sunday. Anyway, talking about Thomas Frank anyway, so we'll have to see what happens there. Chris, thank you very much for your time today. It's been much appreciated. Just to give us 5 minutes of your time. And we hope to see you on Sunday, man. We hope to get a win on Sunday.
Really appreciate it, mate. Yeah, all the best with everything. And thanks for having me on.
You too, bro.
All right. Take care, mate. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bro. Anyway, man. Thank you.